Hey everybody, Shawn here from the Automation Blog and School, and in this episode of Automation Tech Tips, no, we're not going to call it that. You know, when I envisioned Tech Tips, I thought it was going to be short 5-minute demos of how to use features of products. But all the vendors who come on, they want to do a 20-minute plus demo of their complete product. And so I'm going to change the name of this series to the Automation Demo. I'll use Tech Tips for something else in the future, but for now, I'm going to go ahead and rebrand all the previous episodes here in the coming weeks. And this will be either the first or the 10th episode of the Automation Demo, depending on when you see this. But in this episode, we're going to sit down with Vilas Desai, and I'm sure I'm not saying that right, so my apologies, Vilas. He's going to demo to us his product, PlantWorx. Now, it's a great product for those of you who have lots of instrumentation, lots of automation devices in the field that you're going to keep documented. And you know, you're doing it the old-fashioned way with Excel spreadsheets or with AutoCAD, and it's just extremely time-consuming. Well, what his product PlantWorx can do is it can document hundreds, if not thousands, of devices in mere minutes. So that's what he's going to demonstrate. And if you have lots of instrumentation and other devices you have to keep documenting and updating, then I think you're going to want to watch this demonstration. Vilas, thank you for coming on the Automation Demo to tell us all about your product, PlantWorx. Before you get started, would you mind sharing with our audience, you know, not only your position in what you do, but also who PlantWorx, what applications and what type of clients PlantWorx is targeted at?
Thank you, Shawn, for having me over here, and good morning to you. I really appreciate your time with me. PlantWorx, let me give you a small brief of what PlantWorx is about. It's an instrumentation software aimed at reducing engineering time significantly, and it also manages changes instantaneously. Basically, the audience for PlantWorx is in process industries for the instrumentation engineers, the project engineers, the design engineers, typically for the project team where you have new projects, that is the greenfield projects, or you may also have the brownfield projects. As a matter of fact, PlantWorx is used by engineering construction companies, EPC, we call them as engineering, procurement, and construction industries, and also consultants for the process industries. And since PlantWorx is hosted on AWS, it can be a multi-tenant system as well as a single user system, Shawn.
Excellent. Now, I know, I think you wanted to kind of take us through and show us how this software works. Again, it's web-based, it's on Amazon, AWS. So you're in a browser right now, and you're going to kind of show us the nuts and bolts about what it does.
Absolutely, Shawn. Let me take you for in the next few minutes on the software itself. Let us have a small ride of the software. To begin with, this software is based for the clients. I mean, you have to first configure, the user will first do the configuration of the clients. Okay, he configures the clients for various parameters such as the information of the clients, and then we go through the configuration of the clients. This is a very important feature that PlantWorx offers, in the sense that every user, every client has different ways of nomenclating his devices and his process parameters. So he can always customize using this screen. And most importantly, what you'd observe over here is you have 3 radio buttons. One is the default button, and then you have the bypass MR button, and then you also have the bypass junction box and MR button. This configuration gives the user the option to decide what kind of project he has. When you bypass the junction box and the marshalling racks, the user will have the option of connecting the field instruments directly to the control panel. Okay, so you don't have to worry about the junction box and marshalling rack. So all documents will be created in accordance to the selection that you make here. The next option would be to bypass the marshalling rack and keep the junction boxes intact. So the wiring will be done from the instrument, the field instrument, to the junction box and then further to the control panel. And if you don't want to bypass anything, you just go to the default selection, wherein you have a complete big system where you have lots of junction boxes and marshalling racks, where you're catering to IOs like 15,000 and 20,000 kind of IOs. So for big systems, you use the default configuration. But once you're done with the configuration uh, for the tags and the devices that you're going to use in your application, you may also decide the process areas and the process units on your application. All right. So this is where you are going to decide all the process areas of your plant. If you're working for a new application, you can keep on adding the process areas. And if you just want to remove some areas and then add some other areas, you can use these buttons over here. You can also define the process units on this tab. Okay, you can as well add new process units or you may delete any process units. So typically you do the client configuration the first stage, and then in the next stage you are going to decide the projects on which you're going to work at. All right. Now I've already defined a few projects over here. Maybe you can create a new project by using create project button, or you could modify an existing project, right? So when you move into the project section, everything is self-navigating. The user will first write down all the project information details over here on these tabs, and then once he updates this or he saves this, he moves to all of these tabs automatically. I mean, the software is self-navigating in that sense. So let me show you over here. I update it, and then you can see the tab moving automatically from project information to measurements, units of measurement. This screen allows the user to define the measurement system that he's using in his project. It may be an American system or it may be a British system of measurement. And once you update this information, you're automatically navigated to the next tab, which is the process parameters. So here the user will be defining all the initial parameters of the processes that he has, and all of this data will be automatically copied into the data sheets and all areas where the process parameters are being used in his application. Right. So the starting point now, these are all the one-time setup for the projects. Once you finish this, you'll be automatically navigated to the P and ID diagrams over here. So what the user does is he looks into the P and I diagram. This is the starting point for the software, Shawn, where the user will look into the P and I diagram and starts populating his database in the software. So assume that the first P and I diagram is PID01, which is configured over here. Now this P and I diagram, the details that you find on this URL is all the P and I diagrams, the loop diagrams are listed here for the P and ID reference that we have. If you want to open up a loop, you can simply click on this button and it will give you all the items listed in this loop. So there are more than 62 items which are currently used for this project. Now this page also allows the user to define his data sheets. Let me just go through adding a new item, and then the users would be able to appreciate the ease at which this will be done. So I'm going to select a new item for the existing loop, which is PID loop, which is 01, and I just decide on which side is the instrument, which is, let us assume that we are talking about a level instrument and a level sensor for that, which is the electronic type. We define also the classification if the element is in the hazardous zone. So we can define it over here, and then we move on to the next. Here you can write the configure the ingress protection, something like IP66, something like this, and you go to the next one. The next one will be deciding the transmitter. So the user will first enter the line number where the transmitter is defined, is located rather, and then he selects whether it's a transmitter or a switch. He selects a transmitter, and then once he enters, soon after he enters the type of the transmitter, he would observe that the ISA code and the tags are generated automatically. So let me show this. The ISA code is generated here. In the next page, you'll see the tag also being automatically generated. You also find the type of the signal being generated automatically. The user then would have to configure whether it's a 2-wire system or a 3-wire system or a 4-wire system for the transmitter that he uses. Let's say it's a 2-wire system, and then we navigate to the next screen. where we are going to connect the instrument to a junction box. So once after it does this junction box, it's say it's a conventional type of junction box, and then it's an analog type of the signal for junction box. We just say the junction box number is say some 18 number of junction box, and you say which strip it is connected to, terminal strip, and then you are done with it. Soon after you've done it, the software will navigate you to the data sheet. We'll talk about the data sheets a little bit later because it's one of the most important and flexible features of PlantWorx. So I'll take you to the data sheet a little bit later. Then once he enters all of this information, you can see the last item which is being added is the level sensor as well as the level transmitter, which we just did. Right. So it is as simple as adding an element in say around 30 seconds or something like this. So every record that is being created does not take more than 15 to 20 seconds. Now, once you create a record like this, you have all of the information, all of the outputs coming directly. For example, the instrument index, you have all these instruments listed down over here, and these are all the tabs for all the details of the instrument that you find: the P&ID reference or the loop number where it is existing, the line number and its process area. It also shows you the tag ID, which is generated automatically, and then the device description, what type of device this is. These parameters are set manually, which is the which is used for setting the range, and all of the units of measurements are taken automatically, as we saw in the project configuration. Then you also have the option of defining some user-defined functions, like UDF is a user-defined field. In case the user wants to add some more fields, he can always define it over here, right? And then he navigates to the next buttons to see a provision for a few more user-defined fields, and then the one that we just added was IP66 for the last element. So all of this information also is available to the user. So this is how immediately, how instantaneously the output for instrument index is created, right? And then you also have other details like the junction box schedule, the number of junction boxes that you use in the software, and all of the details of the junction box. That is also done instantaneously. Now, in order to, the consultants basically need only these two information along with the data sheets I just mentioned to you some time back. This is the data sheet that you have, all right? So if you open up the data sheets, the best part of this data sheet is it allows the user to download a template which is already given by PlantWorx, or he could also have his own template, designed his own template, and upload it to the cloud. Let me show you the example of downloading the template for the O2 analyzer. This is the template. So PlantWorx offers more than 100 data sheets for the users to have a selection of all the types of different instruments that he has in the project. So this is how it looks. It is Excel based, and then if the client does not want to use the data sheet that is created by PlantWorx, he could always have his own data sheet uploaded. For example, I click this button and it will guide me to a new data sheet. So for example, I go and select a data sheet from the library that I already have over here. All right. So I select this data sheet. Say, for example, the primary elements, it was the A analysis element. So I can always upload it back to the cloud. And if I want to make any data sheet after having entered the data, I can always download the data sheet. So this way, the user can upload the data sheet or download the data sheet any number of times that he wants. And this can also be done offline.
So when they download the template, they're getting a blank version of the form. And then they can upload that with the data they put in and then re-download that later and update it and then upload it again. So the template is really the blank form, and the other two buttons allow you to upload and download what you've already worked on. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, one of the things here is in case the user does not want to have a template that is created by PlantWorx, he can always select a template that he has and upload it by using this button. All right, because he has his user, his end customer has a different way of showing a data sheet, so he could do that himself.
Awesome.
Yeah. So this is how data sheets are managed, and I'll take you to another project because I'll have to enter a lot of data here, which I don't want to do. I'll take you to a small project, okay, where you could see a few devices being listed. All right, there is a record created here. There is no record, so this is not the one. We can go to the thing that I want to show over here is the speed at which the outputs are generated. The ones which we didn't see earlier is what I'm going to show you now. So I have this P and ID 01, and this is a loop number 01 for this PID for a different kind of project. And I open up this, right? I have these three instruments listed over here. As I did some time back, you can always add an item over here. So if I go to the records, I would see all of these three listed down over here. Okay, and I'll just enter the data for connecting it to, let's say, the control panel and the strip of the control panel. So this is typically what the user enters, CP01 and terminal strip number 1, say for example, and the controller is CO01. If I do some mistake over here in terms of the nomenclature of the devices and the field instruments, I will get errorless. I will get some errors which are popped up. All right, rack 11 says slot 1, and module number is say 4 channel analog input module, and this is channel number CH01, channel 02, and sorry, channel 02 will be a CH02 and channel 03, CH03. This is for, you can do bulk editing by just dragging it uh, through all your records. So I have 4 channel analog input module over here, and node is not applicable. This is the node ID which is not applicable, and we are all in 01, and let's say we are in on the 6th of May 06/05-2022. So if I save this information, and if all of this formatting is correct, I should go through it, right? Now it's saying invalid control panel ID using the project for, and I see what is the configuration made over here, right? I am saying the control panel should be in this format, CPNNN, CP-NNN, right? And rack should be R, okay. So I'll go back to this formatting and see if I made some errors, and then I'm again move forward to the project, right? So I go over here back, and then I just want to show you how easy it is to make changes also. All right. So I go to the records and I go back over here and make the one. It was CP-111 is the control panel. So I'm sorry, CP-111, and control panel strip number was say 1, and control ID was CO01. That was R11 and S11 module. AI. And it is CH01, not applicable. Research don't have. So this is what it looks like. Control panel terminal strip number exceeds background. So these are all the errors that we get, right? So if I made these errors deliberately just to show the user how easy it is to identify the problems that you have. Now there are no more errors, so these records are updated successfully. So once you have all of this information, the outputs that are generated, besides the instrument index, besides the junction box schedule, is the user also gets cable schedule. Just look at the speed at which you are getting the cable schedule done over here. This project does not have a marshalling rack, so the instrument is directly connected to the junction box and from the junction box to the control panel, right? And then you also get loop diagrams. Just see the alarming speed, the clarity, and the visibility of all the loop diagrams that you get. Now, the best feature of PlantWorx, Shawn, is you could do maybe around 3,000 loop diagrams in a matter of 2 minutes or less than 2 minutes, much less than 2 minutes, I would say. So you can also export this to the PDF. What that means is you don't need a license for AutoCAD in order to get the drawings. So you can see it over here, the clarity and the visibility of all the loop diagrams, right? It gives all the details. The other thing about the loop diagrams, Shawn, is they can be customized to reflect the way a customer wants the loop diagrams to be seen. In fact, he wants to go over here and he doesn't want this way. Say, for example, he wants to have a different formatting over here. He wants to have two lines coming over here instead of having one line. He can customize the loop diagrams the way he wants. PlantWorx will do that for him. Then we have the termination diagram for the junction box. See the speed at which it is done, and then also the termination diagram for the control panel. Now, I just showed you three records, but if you have say around 2,000 records, the time it takes to generate all of these outputs, which we see over here, the instrument index, the junction box schedule, cable schedule, and all of this is less than typically 2 minutes to generate all of them together. The user will also get other outputs like PLC, DCS, IO listing. So what we have is only 3 instruments, right? And then there are 3 DI counts for this. So this is all of this is coming to control panels 111. Then he also has a junction box consolidation over here where it says the type of junction boxes that you have used for all of these instruments. The junction, there is a DI junction box, DI1, DI12, and DI3. 3 junction boxes, each one of them having only one instrument, right? And each of these instruments is carried by 2 wires. So you can add a few more wires if you want as spare wires, and then you could, when you save this, you will see that the total number of terminals is increased from the current ones to say the 3. So 2 plus 1 is 3. So that is how it gets updated on its own, and you can also export this information to an Excel sheet. So all of the outputs are either going to the Excel sheet or they are stored in the PDF documents. You have any questions so far, Shawn?
No, I really see the power of when you create your project, you're defining all of your like your junction box ID and your control panel ID and your all of your nomenclature. You're defining that so people who are doing data entry don't make a mistake, and so you have a standard. And then once you do that for every PID, you're filling that in, and now it's creating all of your diagrams for you. So I can see the power in what you're doing. And it's good that you have the ability to export to Excel and save as PDF so people can share the information after they plug it all in.
That's perfect, Shawn. And when you said that I can do it, the way that the devices are nomenclated, as we discussed some time back, is configured right at the beginning when you go to the client section over here, right? So this is where you define how your configuration would be done for every tags and every devices. So the customer defines those things first ahead of starting the project. All right. Now let me also show you, Shawn, the way that changes are managed, right? Now in this example, let us say in PID01, we have 3 items listed, right? And then instead, I did not want to have flow meter or a flow switch rather. Instead of a switch, I wanted to have a transmitter. So what I do is I open up this item independently, and instead of I have good on the flow, but I wanted to have a transmitter instead of a switch. All I do is I just go back over here and say it's a transmitter, right? So now a transmitter is not the transmitter. So it's a 2-wire system. All right. So I can just go and define it over here, and then it will take me to function, right? blind transmitter, and then analog signal. All of these tags are generated automatically. These changes happen automatically. I mean, the user does not have to worry about uh, going to a transmitter from a switch. So then he goes to the next section and it just says, I'm good with it, right? He still wants to go into junction box number one. You can see what happens over here is, I'm sorry, I did not enter the signal type. It was analog input, and I am say done. Now, this instrument is added successfully. It opens up the database for the flow meter, that is a transmitter, and a flow sensor and a transmitter. And then I go to the records and see that this change is affected immediately. So you get a flow transmitter, right? And you get three-wire transmitter, which is analog input. We earlier had all of these as digital inputs, right? So now if I go back and look into my PLC DCS configuration, it shows you have three counts again as the total counts. I have not yet saved it. Let me see the records. I go back to the records and save it and save these records. Okay. And I'll see that I have two DIs and one of the DI was replaced by an analog input. So we have total three counts again. So this is how easy it is. And the same changes are also reflected in your instrument index immediately. So you have a flow transmitter instead of a flow switch. And you also have a loop diagram done for the flow transmitter here instead of a flow switch, right? These are the two switches that we had earlier. So all changes are managed instantaneously. These changes can also be seen in the transmission diagram. So now you have a junction box for analog input and you have two junction boxes for the digital inputs, right? So this is how changes are managed instantaneously. You have any questions on this, Shawn? I think I'm running too fast on this.
No, I think what you did all makes sense. I mean, you changed it from digital to analog, and that once you saved it, that reflected throughout the entire project, all the way
Yeah,
down here to the terminal diagram. So no,
yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, so even if you do these changes on all of these, almost all these records, it doesn't take any time to reflect those changes throughout your documentation, right?
Yeah, makes sense to me.
All right. Okay. So now let us talk something about some features that we saw in this in PlantWorx. Right now, for the starters, PlantWorx is most user friendly. As you saw, you don't have to really navigate from one screen to another screen. The user does not have to open up too many windows and then navigate from one window to another window. He always remains in only one window. That is one of the most important things here, which makes it very easy for the user to use the software, right? So because of the self-navigating feature that we just saw, the user will also not needed to have any formal training on the product. It's just a matter of getting used to the product in 15 minutes time. We also have some videos done on how to use the software for every step, for every stage. So that is typically a 2 minute or 3 minutes video for each of these tabs, and then maybe a total of 35 minutes video. That is all the training that the user will want to have, right? And because the software is hosted on the Amazon Cloud Services, AWS, Amazon Web Services, the user does not need to have huge servers, right? And the servers are basically I mean, you don't have to maintain the server. You don't need an admin staff to maintain the server. And you also don't need to pay a lot for the server on this in terms of the space also. So because of that, there's a lot of cost which is saved on the server part of it. The next advantage that I would like to highlight over here is the customization aspect of these of PlantWorx. Yeah, we just saw how easy it is to configure or to customize the application for every client, and the user can also customize all the project parameters that he has. He can customize the initial process parameters, or he can also customize the way the process parameters are being measured, and he can also customize the type of the outputs that he wants to have. Someone wants to have a different format of the instrument index, we can always do it for him. So this is also customizable. He could use the user defined fields also and enter the data over here the way he wants. The other customization aspect is he can customize the loop diagrams. Now different people have different ways of drawing the loop diagrams, so he could do that also over here. The the loop diagrams, yes, these are the ones. So he could also customize the way a loop diagram should look like, right? So the customization is one of the most important and inherent features of of PlantWorks. In terms of speed, as I said, all these outputs are generated at lightning speed, right? So even the loop diagrams, which are as complex as this is typically a very simple loop diagram because it involves only the junction box and the control panel. But if you have a loop diagram with the marshalling rack also, then even then the speed does not change because we use the services of AWS and also the high speed engines available on the AWS server, right? So all of these outputs are generated in a matter of just 2 minutes time.
Excellent.
Now, yeah, as I also said sometime back, you don't need an AutoCAD. There is a lot of cost the user has to pay for an AutoCAD, right? So since all the outputs are generated in the PDF format, AutoCAD is really not required. Even then, if the user wants to have an AutoCAD kind of output, he can always use some special software which is available to convert from a PDF format to an AutoCAD format. So you don't typically require any AutoCAD in this. You have any questions, Shawn?
No, just an observation. I mean, when we look at a loop diagram, these are not very complicated um, drawings, right? But they do have a lot of text and information on them, so it can be tedious to actually work on them in
Yeah,
AutoCAD. And if you make one small change to, how you're going to label, let's say, inputs or outputs, or you add one terminal. I mean, that's a lot of legwork you have to do in AutoCAD. So I can see the advantages here of, I make a change and it just regenerates all the loop diagrams. So there's definitely an advantage
absolutely.
there. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. As simple as that, right? Now, the last point which I wanted to highlight, Shawn, over here is we talked about flexibility in technical terms, but we also offer a lot of flexibility on the on the cost and the affordability to the users for PlantWorks, right? The sole reason to invent PlantWorks is to make it available and affordable for any type of customer. Now we know that there are software which are available for only tier one customers. So if tier two and below customers want to have some kind of software like this, there is nothing available. They have to shell a lot of money on using the high-end software. So the way the prices are, the prices the customer has to pay for PlantWorks is also customized in the sense that he can use it on a monthly subscription or he can also use it on an annual subscription. And not only that, the user could also have an option to pay only for the features that he uses. So if it is a consultant, he may not want to have loop diagrams. So he just not do any input on these orange cells. He doesn't have to input all of these things. He just has to do the P&D right up to the junction boxes, and that is the end of it. He doesn't have to do anything else. So he gets all of his diagram without going into the detailed engineering for his project, right? So this is one of the best features that PlantWorks talks about.
And that's really what you said while you created the software was the tier one customers
Absolutely.
who have, they have very large budgets, so they can afford very expensive solutions. But there's, like you said, there's nothing for those 2 tier and below customers who don't have huge budgets for this type of software. And so you make it available on a monthly or annual basis at, at an affordable rate for those tier two and tier three and lower customers.
Perfect. Yeah, that's the whole essence of doing PlantWorks. The whole idea is to make it available for for customers who work only on 200 and 300 IOs, and yet they have to spend months on doing the engineering, and then the change management comes along with that. That takes much more time than doing the project itself. So, in order to cater to these lower end customers, PlantWorx has been a perfect solution.
Excellent. Was there anything else you wanted to show us today?
I guess I have covered almost everything. Maybe in the next session, when I add the roadmap to PlantWorx is we are also building up an API for Excel. For some customers, it is very useful in the sense they say that all of my IO listing, the way the after the junction box, if the instrument has to be connected to a control panel or to a marshalling rack, I have all of this information on an Excel sheet. So why do I have to spend time on doing the editing in this orange colored cell? So the next step, maybe in another 2 weeks time, you would find that we also have, besides the save, we also have import from Excel. So when you click on the import from Excel button, you get all of this information automatically populated. This is very useful for OEMs who have a standard way of doing their engineering. They don't want to do this data entry often. So integration to Excel is one feature, and the next feature coming after 2 weeks is we are also developing an API for integrating PlantWorx with other software which do the P&I diagrams. So just the customer just has to give the drawings in the P&I diagram. PlantWorx will scan all the P&I diagrams and then generate. Then he doesn't have to go even through the process of entering all of these items. So he can sit and enjoy on getting the benefit from importing all of the information right from the instrument to the time it is wired to the last extent, that is the PLC or the DCS. He has to worry nothing about. All of that will be done automatically. So these are the two APIs that we are building up in the next 1 month's time.
Yeah, so you're going to help leverage customers who already have a lot of this information, utilize it with PlantWorx. So that's good. That makes sense. Now, if somebody wants to find out more about PlantWorx and maybe even contact somebody about doing like a one-on-one demo, where would people go to find out more about PlantWorx?
At this point of time, the information will be very soon available on this URL itself, where when you go to the home page, it's not yet done, but we use one of the buttons to go to guide the user to the help mode. In the help mode, you have all of this information available on how to use the software, and we also allow them to communicate to us on my email ID, on the email ID of PlantWorx, on our company email ID, which is plantworx@softbrains.net. I'll spell it out.
Yes, please.
PLantWorx at softbrains.net. So that's plantworx@softbrains.net.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show today and showing us, giving us a quick tour of PlantWorx and how it works. And I just appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much, Shawn, for having me here too, and I really appreciate your time too. So let's meet after we do these two APIs once again to show your audience that indeed a lot of things have been incorporated into PlantWorx, and it is one of the most ideal software that can be used.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. And I want to thank Vilas for coming on the show and demoing his PlantWorx product to us. Now, if you know anybody who's looking for affordable and highly rated PLC, HMI, and SCADA training, please send them over to my website, theautomationschool.com. And if you'd like to follow or support me, you can do so over at automation.locals.com. With that said, I want to wish you all a very happy, safe, and healthy week. And until next time, my friends, peace.